how did you get into the post-concussion component of what you do? And what inspired you? And what are some solutions to people who are suffering with any type of, I mean, well, with specifically concussions? Because I think more people have concussions or walking around with concussions, and they have no clue.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, it's actually an interesting story. So both of my boys played football, and way back when they were pee-wee athletes, I was the team mom and the team doctor, and I actually sat on the board of the organization. So we were at a game one day, and forgive the length of the story, but there were always two teams. There was the A team and the B team. The A team was the better kids. The B team were the kids you were trying to develop, or the kids that never quite made it to the A team. So the A team played on the weekends, and we always had an athletic trainer on the field, which, may or may not have been great, but there was somebody,
There's somebody there.
right. There was a healthcare professional on the sideline that at least if a child got injured, somebody tended to them. Well, there was a Wednesday night game I was at, and clearly the B team is not deserving of the athletic trainers. So there was no professional on the sideline. And,
Of course they're not.
right. The world just doesn't work logically some days. So we were there, and anyway, you fast forward, and there were two boys, and I watched them go helmet to helmet, both boys flat on their back down on the ground. So I immediately dropped the camera and the team mom routine, and I ran out to the field and identified myself as a chiropractic physician. The boy on the other team, the opposite team, it was not my child, but my child, our teammate. So you look at those kids as your own, certainly.
Absolutely.
Especially when they're injured.
Yeah, mama bear comes out.
Oh, absolutely. And the other boy got up, ran off the side of the field. So at that moment, I was really focused on the boy who had not gotten up on our team. And the other coach had met me out on the field. And I said, please don't, I identified myself, and I said, please don't touch him. He needs to be assessed for concussion and spinal injury before you move him. And he said, I think he'll be fine. He needs to get up. And I said, I don't think you heard me. It's inappropriate to touch him. I watched the injury, and I want to make sure, please don't move him until we make sure he's capable of being moved. And he proceeded in front of me, and I was mortified, to yank on his arm and lift him up off the field. Yes. And walk him across the field, overriding my physician status, if you will, on the field. And I followed the young boy off and assessed him on the sideline. Yes, concussed, no spinal injury. Thank goodness, because he was
right. No, I know.
Yep. And I looked at my athletic director, who was on the field at the time, and I said, if you don't do something about this, I will. That coach needs to be removed from the field, definitely.
He's a danger.
Permanently, right? Because he's inappropriate in the way he was treating a child. So it was that event right there that really inspired me to start educating. So I had teamed up with a bunch of my colleagues in the chiropractic profession, and we had put on a program. At the time, we're no longer doing it this way, but at the time it was called Power Play in Sports. And we were educating not only doctors, but parents, coaches, and kids on the symptoms to watch for concussion, what you do when you get a concussion, who should be responsible, and how to return a child not only to play, but return to school. And it was interesting, to your point, we did some work with the Illinois Development Olympic Committee for some of the kids. And we went in and we educated a lot of the parents and the kids. And they would come up to us afterward and go, you know what? I think my kid's been concussed 1, 2, 3, 10 times, and nobody's diagnosed it, right, after we reviewed a lot of the symptoms. So unfortunately, even with all the press that concussion does get in the media, I still think it's a very undervalued, underlooked condition, especially from the kids up, right? Like you almost expect it in professional football.
Well,
but what
I don't
about
know
our
what
children
you're doing now, but when I was growing up, they were like, oh, just, muscle through it.
Right.
My husband, at the age of 16, had a traumatic brain injury. He they had a head-on collision, 70 miles an hour. He went through the window, ended up in a ditch face down.
Wow.
And so he was in a coma. And when he got back, to doing what he needed to do, no one told him, not to drink. Big mistake. You've seen those Amen Clinic SPECT scans, right? Understanding parts of the brain that aren't getting blood flow. And number 2, he was a big soccer player and football player. They didn't tell him not to use his head.
Right. Yeah, no, it was, you got your bell rung.
Yeah, we have a society that's completely uninformed.
Yes. And if you could tell me how many fingers I was holding up and who was the president of the United States, you were fine. right? That was the big, that was the big test. And now we know even down to subconcussive hits, it's not always as obvious as what your husband walked through. It's all these subconcussive hits that can happen where, if the brain shakes within the skull, you can have a concussive activity, and it doesn't even have to be a major event. So
it doesn't, because the brain is like butter,
right,
and your skull is hard.
right.
So think about if you took some butter, and we're assuming it's not in the freezer, okay?
Of course.
Soft butter, and you throw it against the wall, it's gonna go splat, right? Now that's your brain.
There's the new commercial. Instead of your brain on drugs, it's your brain.
I know. I realize you must be reading my mind. I'm like, that's a great commercial.
It is, and it'll help the butter industry in some weird way, I'm sure. So
I know.
yeah, they'll sell more butter and more treatment for concussion. It's all good.
Oh my God,
all
that's
good.
hilarious. I might just do it. You know what? Forgive me. I might just do it.
Listen, I'll watch. I'll buy your butter.
It'll be organic.
I would expect nothing less.
Right. So
that's for sure. Yeah, it's very fascinating, and I do think the good news is that it is at least getting some press, right? So we're starting to create an awareness of these injuries, and as a result of that activity, and then my desire to help educate people, I take it one step further, and now I travel, the country lecturing on pre and post concussion nutrition, the relationship to oral health, the relationship to infection. And we walk down these different paths that patients are very unaware of. And unfortunately, we're now seeing people who 20, 30, 40 years later are still having effects from a concussion that was never really treated properly or even diagnosed properly.
Even diagnosed. So, actually, I was going to say we shouldn't even go there, but let's do it for a second here. I just want to say that if you don't have focus and you don't have mental clarity and mental acuity, you should check that out. It's not actually normal. It may be common, but it's not normal.
Correct.
And it's common because of these mini traumas that we're all exposed to daily. And I'm just going to say this as an advocate of chiropractic. Your body doesn't heal unless the spine is aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Both of us, right? We can help with nutrition. We can help in the different ways that we do, like I do energy healing, pulse electromagnetic frequencies. I mean, there's a variety of different things of which I do in yourself as well. But the point is, unless the spine's aligned and the communication is getting from the brain to the rest of the body, and that's why the spine needs to be aligned. It needs to go to every organ, tissue, and cell in the body. Unless it's doing that, your body's not going to heal.